Today we're going to look at the topic of Adam and Eve and science and the debate that this has caused. To understand how science and scripture relate, we're going to look at the example of biblical astronomy. Now, scripture records observations about how our solar system works, and it attributes the movement of our solar system to God, not to natural laws. So there are no laws of science, how the solar system works, about astronomy in scripture. So we can't compare scripture with modern science, and we can't, by the same token, construct laws about astronomy from scripture. So we can't compare them. But scripture does not make any false or wrong statements. But if we want to understand the natural laws, Christians trust scientists, not the Bible. And we can also trust scripture, that the observations that have been recorded are true and correct. So there are no issues between Bible and the astronomy. When we look at biblical anthropology, it's just like astronomy. Scripture is not scientific, it doesn't even give us natural laws, but it does give us a pattern for how humans developed from primitive to more complex. It's not scientific, but it's not false, it's correct. When we look at how humans were made, again, like biblical astronomy, it's God who makes Adam and Eve, and like the observations, we're given literal processes, and they mean more than just Adam was made of dirt. It means that his nature was earthly, he wasn't a god, and Paul the Apostle makes this quite clear. And Eve also, she's made from Adam, but it's not in a biological context, it's sociological. It's about marriage and about the roles of gender. So despite this, these statements are correct. However, we look at the snake, it's not literal, it's a metaphor. Snakes don't eat dust. So we can see that the observations about our solar system are not scientific, and they're correct. So the same by analogy applies to biblical anthropology. The record is literal, but it's consistent with what is real and what is true and reality, but it's not scientific. We can't derive our laws about human origins to make a creation science from Genesis. It just isn't appropriate, just like it's not for astronomy. When we look at family trees in scripture, we see that all human beings are considered to be all the nations, and they are traced back to Adam and Eve, that they are the ancestors of biblical nations through Noah's sons, and this is considered to be all men. And this then is a correct, inerrant statement. However, family trees are incomplete, so we don't have all the details of Adam and Eve's children, and we don't have the details of Noah's son, and we don't have all the details for someone like Cain's wife. We don't know where she came from. Jesus' own family tree has some omissions, and someone like Melchizedek, a king and a priest, we don't even have his father and mother or ancestry. It's a mystery. So the family records from the Bible are not complete. We don't have a full picture, we don't have a full understanding. And that's just within Scripture. What about with respect to the whole history of the origins of humans? Perhaps that's a part that Scripture has left off as well. Some people say that we need to be physically descended from Adam and Eve, or the gospel is overturned. Well, Abraham, Adam and Eve, and Jesus are our covenant representatives. And we don't need to be physically related to Jesus or Abraham to have our status changed from sinner to saint, to have his righteousness imputed to us, or to be called Abraham's children. So, physical descent is not a requirement to have your status changed before God. When we think about this logically, can we compare our modern laws with God making the sun to rise and set? Can we compare our modern understanding of the development of hominids to God making Adam out of the ground? Well, one is the supernatural acts of God, and these are above science. They are supernatural. They break the natural laws. So we can't really compare God's actions and natural laws, because they're not the same. However, this does not mean Scripture is false. It does record facts about our astronomy and about our anthropology, our ancestry. And if astronomy is consistent with reality, by analogy, so is human origins. We can trust both of these accounts in Scripture. We can trust the astronomy, we can trust the anthropology. We have to understand neither are scientific. So we know that Adam and Eve are the first humans, and they are our covenant representatives and the ancestors of all biblical nations. That's a fact. And all biblical nations are all men. The observations that are recorded in Scripture are literal, and they're true. But we can't compare or convert these processes into science, because they're not compatible. So the Bible is not an alternative to science, and Christians should be consistent. If they accept scientific laws for astronomy, there's no reasons why they can't accept laws of that developed our human race. And we can do both without any loss of confidence in Scripture. So the purpose of Scripture is to elevate our minds to God, to the supernatural. Science brings our mind down, it lowers it to earth, and that includes all the variations of science, including creation science. It brings us down to natural laws. So, how can we end the debate? Well, we must ask ourselves, are the facts that the Bible records and processes, that's family trees, and how Adam and Eve were made, are they scientific? Well, biblical astronomy teaches us a resounding no. Are they therefore incorrect? Well, biblical astronomy also teaches us no, because we know that the observations of our solar system are consistent with what we can see and feel today. So, science is correct, and the Bible is correct. One focuses on natural laws, and Scripture has its own unique presentation for biblical astronomy and biblical anthropology. They are different, and there's no basis for debate there, and we can have confidence in both accounts. This ends the debate. The main problem is that we are imposing or superimposing on Scripture our modern scientific perspectives, and this was never the original intention or capability or capacity of the authors of Scripture. They have their own voice and they have their own unique way, and we should allow Scripture to elevate our minds to heaven, and when we want to come down to earth we refer to the scientists to understand. It might seem like a dualism, but it's not. We are looking at two different things. They are not one and the same.